operating system, then worked on low-level performance and graphics software as we labored to finish the upcoming release. I continued working on that same team for many years, writing graphics, performance, and user interface code, and wound up leading the team for several years. Most of my projects prior to Android were really enjoyable, but not very visible. If my family asked what I did, I'd tell them about the software I wrote, and then I'd describe in a hand-wavy way the kinds of applications that might use my software, because the reality was that they would never see the results of my code. It just wasn't stuff that real people, consumers, encountered in the real world. Then I joined the Android team, and I was writing software that people across the world would use every day, or at least they would if Android managed to survive. Footnote. And I was writing bugs. The only code that doesn't have bugs is code that is not yet written. We test as much as we can, but the complexity of modern software systems means that there will always be bugs. The trick is to make sure that the bugs are not critical and that we fix them whenever they are found. Then we can get back to writing more code and more bugs. Challenges. We didn't know if it was going to totally flop or if it was going to work. When it worked, I think people were as surprised as they were excited. Evan Miller. The early team at Android consisted of people with lots of experience and very strong opinions. They were confident in what they were trying to build, but they faced an uphill battle to get it to its initial 1.0 release. The team's goal was to create the Android operating system, or OS. This included everything from the low-level kernel and hardware drivers to the overall platform software. It also entailed creating APIs for applications, tools to help build those applications, several applications to bundle with the platform, and services on the back end for those applications to communicate with. Oh, and they wanted to ship all of this with a new phone as well. The software would be provided to manufacturers for free to build their own phones. These partners would build the hardware, and Android would provide the software. The OS would help phone manufacturers by allowing them to focus on their hardware products, leaving the increasingly complex software problem up to Android. At the same time, Android would help application developers by creating a uniform platform across a variety of phones. Developers would be able to write a single version of their app for all of these devices instead of requiring different versions for different devices. The Android team had financial backing from Google, access to an internal pool of engineers experienced at writing software at a very large scale, a rapidly growing smartphone market, and a dedicated team working on the product until it was ready. How could it fail? It might seem in hindsight like Android's success was a given. But in the early days, the team was living in a very different reality, and Android's continued existence was far more tenuous. For one thing, the team might have had Google's economic backing, but Android was just one of many projects that Google invested in. Google's bet on Android wasn't about Google putting its full weight behind it, but about the company sponsoring a team to see what was possible. Footnote. Google was taking similar strategic bets around the same time in web technologies as it started building its own browser, Chrome, knowing that it needed to at least explore these spaces as a hedge against other companies potentially owning them in the future. Also, Android was entering an industry with many entrenched competitors and no clear opening for new players. On the lower end of the market, there were numerous Nokia phones available worldwide. Danger, BlackBerry, and Palm all offered interesting smartphone options to their passionate and loyal users. And there were various Microsoft phones available. And anyone that's worked in the software industry knows that you should always be wary of competing against Microsoft. Footnote. Here I am using a very broad definition of the term smartphone. When the term was first used, it meant essentially a phone plus data, which allowed for more communication through things like email and instant messaging, basically a richer communication device. Today, a smartphone encompasses much more than these fundamental pieces, including things like apps, games, touchscreens, and the plethora of technologies that have come online since a phone was first married to a data plan. Footnote. Bob Borchers, the director of product marketing for the original iPhone, observed, "You never count out Microsoft. They will continue to spend money and work things until they actually get a real product out." As a colleague of mine put it years ago, when Microsoft gets into your market, get out. Then Apple entered the market in 2007, unveiling yet another competitor in an already crowded field. Apple may have been new to mobile phones, but they already had a proven track record with operating systems, consumer computing devices, and their popular iPods. All of these players were well established before Android launched even a press release, much less a product. To attempt to compete in this tough market, the early team focused with a singular drive on reaching 1.0. Everyone fixated on that goal, with most of them working non-stop during insane crunch periods. But knowing they wanted to build this OS didn't mean everyone agreed on how to build it.